and we'll jump back in sometime in the fall.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we were just talking about all that.
I got a job at the butterfly.
Oh,
I'm going to be their marketing and events coordinator.
you what? We're gonna have a meeting. Oh my gosh, I don't even have to email you. I'll just tell you right now. Oh my gosh, we have to go to lunch or something.
Absolutely will.
I just sent Glenn an email yesterday or Friday. What's today? Anyway, sometime. Monday. No, it was yesterday. And he replied back, "Oh, these ideas are wonderful. We'd love to partner with you guys. If you don't mind, I'm going to ask if we can put this on hold for about a month. We have a new marketing director. And when she starts, I'll give her 2 weeks to warm up, and then we'll set up a meeting, and I'll put it on my calendar to touch base." Oh my gosh, this is so exciting. Wow. Oh, it is. It is. This makes me super happy. I had a meeting yesterday. Oh, I don't know if are we on? Anyway, are we on? Oh, not yet. Okay. We're good. We're good. Might not need this. I don't know if we will or not. I better get it up here. Oop. Well, it's not going to even bother, I guess. Okay, fine. Won't use that. This computer is my nemesis, I'll tell you. When it works, it's great. When it doesn't, it's like, okay. So we are live and rolling, I understand. Okay. So today, welcome everyone to Liberated Quilting. And our topic today is color and design. And what I did for today is I went back into some previous notes and information from the first time we did. We talked about color and design, and then kind of pulled that together for today with a little broader view, I guess. And so because you can get books on color and design. You can get a YouTube on color and design. You can do anything you want, and you can choose your style and your approach and look for information that meets your needs beautifully on the internet and in the books options. And so what I really want to push today is two things. One is to trust your heart and fill your needs first. You're the one making the quilt. You're devoting time, you're devoting money, you're devoting the effort, the knowledge, the skill sharing. And not that it's this balancing act of I did this for what do I get back, but when we're making for ourselves or for others, that gift giving, I look for that it feels like a gift giving process, and that it is for myself or for someone else. It is this process of learning more, enjoying more, soaking up the joy of how fabric makes me happy, and realize that if there really was a rule about color, everything would be the same, and it's not. My husband and I are downsizing, and so we're looking at houses. And when you go into other people's homes, especially not necessarily people you walk into this field of color that's like, whoa, interesting. I wouldn't have ever even thought about painting a kitchen that color, or wow, that's the whole dang house is gray and white. Interesting. I'm going to have to put a lot of color into this because that doesn't meet my needs. But it's not that there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. it's that I would hope that we are all surrounding ourselves with the colors, with the vibrancy of life, of everything around us, and that we're saying, I want that color in my house. I want to be around that fabric. Or maybe it's I really love that color, but I wouldn't even dare put it in my house. And it's just an opportunity to focus on it for a short bit and gift it to someone else. So listen to your heart. That's number one. And then the other part is to be patient and to, unless you can't because you have tonight's the baby shower and you got to get that quilt done. But be patient and let the colors talk to you. Know that there isn't a mistake. Be patient with your process of sewing. And if you can, if you have the freedom to give yourself some room to experiment, make table runners, make small things that you can make again with the opposite contrast, with other colors, with other prints, with big prints and little prints. And you can take the concepts that apply to design and really see them in action, really feel them happen. And so trust your heart, go with what makes you happy, and then have patience to let the learning take place. So I have some examples of things, and I am not by any means establishing any rules for anybody. That's not my thing. So, but first of all, let me just show the first thing with color is simply recognizing contrast. And it can be contrast in light dark, it can be contrast in small large print, it can be contrast in a solid in a print, it can be contrast in the type of like modern geometric with a floral calico. I don't know that those two would necessarily go together, but that's me. So I probably wouldn't put those two together. But then again, I can think of things I've seen that I've dearly loved. So you just don't ever know. You just have to go, I'll try it. I'll see. So these two pieces I brought in before, but I just think they're a good example. I actually made 4 of these. 2 of them were gifted out. And every one had it had same fabrics, but had a different arrangement of borders and centers and shapes being the light dark contrast. And actually there's a light dark medium here. So we have the whitish print, the white background print. We have the kind of medium greenish, murky green, and then more of the dark is this burgundy. Well, these are all prints, and they're all pretty equal prints. There's not one that has more sparse design and more dense design, one that has larger and smaller. There's a little bit of small, large difference in the white background to the burgundy. The burgundy is it's a leaf, actually, a batik. And that's another thing. I don't worry about combining batiks with woven, with prints. I don't worry about getting all the same shade of green together or something like that. But that's me. That's where I like that. I like the freedom to just kind of blow the lid off. So this one has mostly light. All right. I did do one that had mostly dark. I don't have that one anymore. This one is more balanced, I think. It has, I can set them both here. This one just has the switch of the center and the border. So the center piece here is burgundy on this one. It's green on this. And then the border is white and the border is burgundy. So it doesn't have too much difference. The border is probably the strongest thing that gives it actually even an illusion of size difference. This one looks smaller. It's not. They're the exact same size. Well, close to exact. Not exact. I'm not exact. Um, and it also, notice too, the interior block that I have in this wall hanging is the same design, but the borders I've changed in the size, the arrangement of the light and darks and mediums being in a different position. So so think about that when you see a pattern that you like on Pinterest, in books. Oh, I guess they're not exactly the same. I thought they were. No, they're not. Well, this not only looks smaller, it is smaller. They're pretty close. I probably ran out of fabric. And that's another thing to think about. You know, one of the things that leads me in a direction about what I'm going to make is this piece of fabric that's got me all jazzed. Do I have enough of it to be the central piece, or do I need to think about it being more of the little accent piece that floats around? So all of those issues come together. So the choices that you have to think about in design, I think, are that you have a purpose for the quilt you're making. It might just be your own exploration. It might just be your own fun. Great. It might be a utility quilt, something you have a purpose for, its use. It might be an art quilt. It might be a real free kind of thing of, oh, I really want to try this technique or this fabric, and I have a spot on this wall. I want to really have it have a central focus. Also think about the creature, I should say, receiving it, because if it's being given to your daughter's dog or something, that might make you think twice about the price of the fabric you choose to use, but maybe not. um, but it also might be something, if I were making it for my grandpups, I would maybe think about using heavier fabric like denims and corduroys and um, outdoor, canvas type things, and use the texture as much as the colors and prints in the design. So that's part of it. If it's for a child, juvenile prints versus more adult florals or geometrics or something, although geometrics are probably pretty across the board. And then I also have that think about, is this a donation quilt? For some of us, we have probably most of us, we have a limited budget. Some of us may cross that line now and then in fabric, um, but doing a quilt for a donation that you're just thinking, I know I want to make this quilt for quilts for kids, for comfort quilts, for quilts of valor, any number of the organizations I know in our community and through our guild. But check your area if you're not Missoula folk. And that might be part of it, because you may not have more to invest in that quilt financially, or you might have to go to someplace like the Quilts for Kids center that we sew at. They have tons of fabric, and it's such a cool experience, because it pushes me to say, these are the fabrics I am going to use today. I don't have my stash here with me, so this is what I have to use. And that'll draw me back to pushing that limit. In the design elements, your free form, your traditional, whether you like modern does have some specific description, but I think in the general public sense of, oh, that's a modern quilter, it's not, there's a lot of crossover on what goes in that category. If it's a scrappy quilt or if it's something you're actually going out and purchasing fabric for, if it's a pieced or fusible fabrics, some are already pretty heavy, and so fusing them creates a little iffiness about how well they'll work in the design. Um, uh, and if you have transfers involved, if you're doing photo transfers, if you're doing embroidery machine work, if you have any kind of pieces like that that you want to focus on, and embellishments that you might want to be trying, maybe you like to do some hand stitchery, maybe you have some uh, Schwarzschild crystals or whatever they're called. That's probably not the right name. But anyway, and then if you're like me, you have a bookshelf that has a whole bunch of patterns that you just know you're going to make someday. And so it might be that you're looking at one of those and that's kind of moving you in the direction. With fabrics, you're going to be looking at, excuse me, I'm going to just get a swallow here. That probably sounded really gluggy on the microphone. Sorry about that. You're going to be looking at colors. You're going to be looking at the scale of your prints. Are they small? Are they big? So when I think of big prints, not that he only does those, but he kind of blew the lid off the box for big prints when Kay Fassett did his line of fabric, and so I think of those. Some of the more uh, Dutch looking sort of painting, florals. There's a lot of modern pieces that are bold strokes and abstract, but they're big. And so you miss a color if you're going to be cutting tiny pieces. So, and that might be fine. It might give you like 6 possible fabrics out of one in a way, but because you're cutting small pieces and you'll get all those different colors in the mix. So all these things with geometric, stripes, dots, theme, fabric. So the Quilt Guild is doing a show in April in 2026, and the theme is Spread Your Wings. So there might very well be some quilts that have a pretty basic design. Might just be a 9-patch or half square triangles or any number of simple designs, but they may have quite a selection of themed fabrics like fairies or birds or butterflies or bugs or things that fly, and or even focusing on social justice issues or personal growth and travel, uh, that more metaphorically represents spreading your wings. So that's the theme of the show, and so you might be looking for fabric that goes with that if you want to enter a quilt in the theme category. Um, I have enjoyed lately making quilts from my orphan blocks. And so finding my orphan blocks around and laying them out and then figuring out how to put flying geese or other star designs or 9-patches or 4-patches or just little checkerboards in between so they all fit together. And that can sometimes lead the parade. And of course, our everlasting scraps. So the boxes and boxes of scraps in my basement, in my sewing room, uh, can sometimes make me go, oh my gosh, I just walk by it and I'll see one fabric poking up and go, oh, I forgot about that fabric. And I'll pick it up and look at it and, oh, this would be really pretty with that other one I have. Where is it? And so then it kind of gets me running. So, so our fabrics are certainly, at least for me, our fabrics are probably the most likely leader for my design decisions. And but then there are some pragmatic things like the time frame that you're working with. like I've jokingly said, but it's happened. Oh, the shower's tonight. Okay, I better get busy. And so it might be that that sort of dictates I'm just doing a 9-patch, one 9-patch block, big, and these 2 fabrics, and that's it, you know. And gee, I have these cute little child focused fabrics, and they go together, and they're sweet, and there we go, done. Um, and also on our creative flow, if we are in a slump, if we are like manic and a little out of control, and have 7 things going at once, gosh, I don't know when that happens. And so, you know, all those things contribute. Our holiday seasonal stuff that, you know, moves us through the calendar, that can sometimes be the leading factor. Any special event, or a person in need is also a special event, I guess, in a way. And so those things are going to kind of feed our creative soul for thinking about how we're going to reflect that, whether it's a graduation or a loss um, or whatever, a healing, someone's injured. And then one aspect is your sewing space. So kits are fabulous. I mean, I I don't tend to go with kits, but there are times when having that kit is really an asset. It brings you into getting a quilt finished. You have everything there. You have it all cut for you. It's all ready. Sometimes it's cut in the basic components. Other times it's cut very specifically into the exact shapes you need. And and then how complicated a piece you're working on. So the example I have to show you today has 7 fabrics. 7 fabrics can be, um, you know, they're to me 7 fabrics is a manageable amount of fabric to cut and stack. And I'm messy. I pull out my fabrics. I'm stacking all my, you know, audition fabrics possibles, and I've got a mess. I've got a disaster just trying to look for 2. You know, it doesn't matter how many there are. But if it is just a 2-color fabric, I know I've mentioned Geese in the Pond is one of my personal favorites. Um, it's then you're just getting out 2 fabrics, and it's easier to clean up. It's easier to stack away in a box. It's easier to just kind of manage the chaos and mess. Think about your ergonomics. Is this a pattern where you're going to have to cut a whole bunch of little squares, a whole bunch of separate triangles? Then the cutting that you have to do for that quilt, that's going to wear on your shoulders and your wrists and in your back if you don't have the right size table. So again, think about making yourself happy, making your needs met. Um, a design wall, if you have one or don't have one, that can make the difference in some quilts. And so you can, if you have more of a scrappy quilt, I really like having my design wall, because when I'm actually coming to the point to put it all together, I may have just cranked out 400 half square triangles in multiple arrangements of color, but now I've got to put them all together, and I don't want one section of my quilt to have all the reds, or I don't want, you know, I want them more evenly distributed, or maybe I do want them lumped together. Um, so do you have a design wall? Is this quilt something that's going to kind of need it? If you don't, what else could you use? Uh, and your movement through the process, or versus efficiency. So do you have a plan, cut it all, get it done, Or do you want the freedom to go, I think I'll start with this, and then I'll see how those go together. If they don't, I think I'll go back and get rid of that one and replace it with this. And so, do you have that kind of time? Do you have that kind of space? Do you have that kind of fabric choice available, either going to the store or in your stash? So, all of those things are going to contribute. And so if you find yourself stuck, this is another way to unstuck, because think about this list, and think about and for those of you online, I'll send it email. I forgot to do that. So it's available, but think about the things I've just said and how they contribute to your jazz, how they contribute to uh, your excitement about a project. So, where do we start? Sometimes we start with a photo that is exciting. Sometimes it's much more traditional in the quilt world and it's a pattern. So, there's a whole bunch of possibilities. My usual is the fabric. That's my usual. But again, thinking about being stuck, think about your environment, both the domestic and the wild. In your domestic environment, there there's a woman at the clay studio who does wonderful pieces that are these amazing replicas in clay and ceramic of like a wall phone, an old-fashioned wall phone with a cord, and the whole thing is ceramic. And then she paints like cartoony figures on them with glazes. And you know, your domestic world can be, even right here in this room, I can be looking at the stand that the camera's on. It has a really cool circular shape with the camera in the middle and the stand underneath it. I'm like, keeps catching my eye, and I keep kind of going, huh, I wonder, maybe, maybe. So sometimes unexpected delights pop out when you start looking. So just be looking around. When you think about your domestic world and in your color schemes, are these colors the colors that make you comfortable and satisfied or safe or happy? Or is that part of where you're stuck because those colors were available and they worked, or maybe they were wonderful a time ago and now you've tired of them? Uh, so so think about just what do you choose to surround yourself with in color, and consider those. Topics of interest, family, pets, your dreams, your journaling, your sketchbook, greeting cards. Greeting cards are a wonderful place to start for an art quilt. You can take a greeting card that you love that's just an artistic abstract something on the front, and blow it up or not, depending on the size of what you want to do. But postcard quilts are kind of fun. You know, you can make just a little tiny postcard size and draw out what's on the greeting card and then cut out and use fusible backing to replicate that design, only with your fabrics, maybe a different color than the card uses. So trying to make it yours. Social media is a place, a source, both in photographs as well as poetry or someone's um, post about an event that is coming up. That might be something that motivates you to make a quilt. Certainly quilt shops, and they have fabric and patterns and tools and everything. Uh, you might be excited by a fabric line. So some fabrics will make 10 different fabrics that all go together. And that's done for you. So it's speeded up for you if you need that. Paint chips can sometimes bring things in line in our brains. You might have a feature fabric, which is what I actually started with in this project. I'll show you. I mentioned orphan blocks. A favorite block design I've mentioned over and over, the geese in the pond is just a favorite of mine. And that design is a go-to. I know how to create it in a variety of sizes, and it's very easy and fun to put together for me. Maybe the opposite is true. It's a challenging block, something that you've seen, a snail's trail, a drunkard's path, um, what's onion skin, I think it's called. It's a pattern and it's curves that radiate out, and you just change the block it's really a cool one. That's a fun one. Panels, and sometimes you have the like 8 yards of a fabric, and it's like, this will make a great quilt back. And that's where you start. So it isn't, if you're stuck, there's a lot of places you can turn to open your mind and heart. I've given some photos just to prompt us all to think about getting started. A medallion quilt is a nice quilt to think about. You can make it as big as you want and start here in the center block and decide how many borders you want to go out, if it's for a big quilt or small. And each border can introduce a new block or a new fabric, and so it can spark up that feeling that sometimes happens when you're making a big quilt and using something repeatedly over and over and over and over, and you're like sick of it by the time you're done, or you don't get done. uh, the Carpenter's Star is I think, a great quilt to work with because you can do it completely scrappy. All you're doing is cutting squares or half square triangles. They're all the same size. Of course, cut half square triangle. Let's say we're going to use 4-inch squares finished. So you're going to cut your squares 4.5, and you're going to cut your half square triangle squares 4 7/8, and then draw the diagonal line and sew on either side, and then you'll have your half square triangles. So the carpenter's square is a really nice one when we're stuck. It's just a great design. And just plain old scrappy. The picture I've put in here is just a row by row, and a variety. Each row kind of shifts a different type of block, and that gives us again a decision making process as we go and say, okay, that's enough. That's as big as I'm going to make this sucker. And then other times, you might have a need ahead of time, and you're getting it to that. Today, I'm going to show you a pattern that you can find online. Uh, there are tutorials. There are any number of possibilities. It's called Hidden Wells, but it's such a cool pattern because it um, it looks really complicated. It looks like you're cutting all these half square triangles and then sewing them together, or sewing triangles that go together with other triangles and in different directions, and it just looks really complicated. But it's what I'll show you, and these were all from my stash. Many of them came from here. Is I have 7 fabrics, and if you look at the picture of Hidden Wells, the center strip, it's 7 strips, and the center strip kind of takes the stage. And so looking at it, I thought, okay, let's start there, maybe that center strip. And so I found a cave that I had, and I started there. Get this out of the way. Then I was noticing in the pattern, now you can get the pattern, so by all means do that. Online, you can also find very specific, um, instructions for cutting, for sewing, all that, and tutorials. Um, I just tend to get a real charge out of going, ooh, I can figure this one out. And that is sometimes true. And sometimes not. So I noticed that it looked like there was a print and a solid like fabric, and then maybe in some of the examples I looked at, the rest of them were all solid looking. The others were more alternating print and solid. So I went with that, the alternating. So I ended up with this arrangement. And if you'll notice if you look up that pattern, you'll notice that it's a wider strip, a skinny strip, a wider strip, a skinny strip. So it alternates that way. And the wider strip in the pattern that I was looking at was 2.5 inches cut, and the skinny strips were 1.5 inch cut. So that's all you're doing. You're just cutting. So here are the cut pieces, and I did. Honest to goodness, I started this at 10:30 this morning. So I really pushed myself. My daughter and I are often laughing with each other about choosing fabrics. She goes to my stash and goes, let's see, I'll do that one. And this one goes. I go, oh, I love that one. Wait a minute, let me show you something else. And she goes, no, this is it, Mom. And so she is a decision maker, that girl. I, on the other hand, absolutely enjoy and thrive on, yeah, but. So then now you might be deciding to just make a table runner. You might be deciding to make a baby quilt. In either case, you're not going to be cutting a whole bunch. So how much fabric you have in your stash is going to probably dictate a bit on what are you going to make. And so in this case, I had really plenty of everything, so it didn't matter. I could go probably with my least fabric, I think. Oh, my least fabric is this one. So I might get to like a kid size quilt or lap size quilt or something. But I'm just going to start with 4 strips of every one. So I cut 4 strips, 2.5 wide, from each of these. I hate the selvage. My eye just goes, there's a white stripe there. I don't like it white in this. It's terrible. I always have to cover it up. Okay, so there's that. And here's this. Now, I did not arrive at all of these right away. I did a fair bit of tossing and bringing stuff out and going, nah, yeah, nah, yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Now, if I have that one, maybe I better go back and toss this one. So, so those are my wide strips. They're 2.5 cut. And then these are my skinny ones. And like I said, at this point, because it was 10:30 in the morning and I had this class start at 12:30, I simply cut 4 of everything and decided, well, we'll see where that takes us. So I have those and this. And this. Now, I am not by any means setting any kind of standards for how colors work together or don't or whatever. I like these. I'm happy with this. But honestly, this is not a pattern I've made before. And I'm a little like, okay, I don't know if those are going to all go right, but we'll see. So that's one of the things I was saying with giving yourself permission to try stuff, to learn from the experience, as opposed to looking at it as failure and success, as opposed to looking at it as this fear of, oh, but what if that doesn't look right? Oh, but what if, yeah, what if? Okay. In looking at this, I'm also realizing that there, in the examples of the patterns, there was more balance on both sides. They didn't always use the exact same fabric, but the outside strip was green. Maybe the outside strip on this side would be a different green, and so on, instead of all different colors. So there's some things like that, and I just decided, I'm just going to go with that. So then, after I cut my 4 strips in each of the 7 colors, I got 2 sets sewn together. And so I have this one and this one. Whoops, they're exactly the same. Um, by this human. And so the next thing is to figure out if you're an accurate sewer. And if you do that, this should be from the seam to the cut edge 1.5. These in the middle will be 1 because both sides are sewn. And this is going to be 1.5. These are all going to be 2 because they're sewn on both sides. So you end up with, should measure 10.5. However, for this pattern, the point is that you end up with squares that you are sewing together. So that's another really cool thing about this pattern is, oh, there's usually a cutting mat and I didn't get one ahead of time. Okay, here's, well, I'll let you get it. Okay. So now what we do is, thank you, just slide it under stuff. Great. Now what we do is we're going to figure out, okay, accurate by someone else's definition of accurate, not mine. I was in a rush, so it may not be. Well, by golly, it's not. So mine is 10. So what you're gonna do is, if you haven't made your seams exactly a 1/4 inch, think about this. You have 6 seams that you've sewn. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just sewing that seam a teensy bit big or small will give you another 1/2 inch. So, or reduce it by 1/2 inch. So in my rush, I wasn't as careful as I might have been. So then what you do is you check the edge and you find your shortest piece and cut those uneven edges off. And then you just cut out some squares. So you're going to flip your cut edge over to the other side, because now you're going to want that on the left. And I'm going to measure. Now, one of the things I'm doing is not just measuring on the outside edge, but also measuring to see that my seams are close enough straight. Yeah, not perfect, but close enough straight. So I'm measuring, my 10-inch line is way over here, and I'm cutting 10. So there's one 10-inch block. And so all you do with your strip sets is cut your 10-inch blocks. And with each one, you may have to go back and trim up a little bit. So I'm gonna, and you can do what I'm doing. I just use my fingernails and get them lined up close enough. Okay. I only need 2 to demonstrate. And then on this, we go like that. So one set of strips goes this way and one set of strips goes that way. Okay? And then now we're going to sew around the 4 sides and then cut the diagonal. And then what'll happen is you will have this piece will end up being next to this piece. So I'll show you. Let's just take a sec. Talk amongst yourselves. No, not really. Oh, plug in. Yeah, we're on. This is the outcome of this is very similar to a quilt I've demonstrated before called a lover's knot. And except that the lover's knot forms a similar finished design, but because it's all the same 4 strips and they line up, you don't have it going opposite directions. It's a little it's different but similar. So then we just go like this. And this pattern is just too easy for words. You don't have to match seams. You don't have to do things. I have a little mark on my little featherweight on the throat plate that marks 1/4 inch. Hopefully it's correct enough. And we just go around. And for those of you who are sewers and you know that when you make a square, you often do some funky things in the corner to get I lost my train of thought. Sorry. You often do a little diagonal stitch to make a nice square corner. This is going to be cut, so we're not worrying about a thing. You just sew off the edge, start on the next side, and sew across. Ooh. When you're cutting strip sets, you may find that as you're lining up the seams to make sure they're straight, that all of a sudden one seam is, or the one, like when you cut, your edge is on 10 and you've got a nice straight edge, but now it's got you almost a 1/4 inch off on your seam. Then what you need to do is go back to that edge and square it up and then do your cut again. Because when you're sewing strips together, especially 7, so many, it over time, over the length, you have a little variation in how straight those are and how straight your sewing is and everything else. So it may just not be perfectly square all the way across. So you want to check that periodically. My 1/4 inch looks rather large to me as I'm sewing this. I hope it's okay. And magnetic scissor, picking up the one pin I have in my. Okay, now we cut from corner to corner And I'll need a longer ruler than I brought. There's one thing. Oh, there it is. Right in front of me. Okay. Thank you. So you go from corner to corner, double check with a 45-degree line that you're not too far off. Hopefully not at all, but pretty close. Yeah, pretty good. Cut. And don't move it. Move around your mat or move your mat. Good. And cut. Now you have this. I'm so excited to see this. I can't envision how these colors are going to go together. Not in my head. So see how this blue here is tiny, but it needs to be tiny because it's coming in here. And then, whoops, no, sorry, I did it wrong. This goes, did I do it right? I might not have done it right. I might have done something weird. Anyway, here we go. Oh, I know why this is happening. It's because I didn't mirror the same colors. So my blue is coming up to my green. Yeah. Okay. Well, that'll be kind of fun to see what happens. So what I'll do is I'll think about that and have my two grays and my two, opposite each other. So we have more like that. But that is the block. And so then you get all of it put together and you'll have, oh wow, that's going to be fun. Because somehow there's going to be like a pinwheely thing going on here. That's interesting. Huh. So I'm excited. So that's where we are. And what just happened, honest to God, you could have given me serotonin or dopamine right now. It injected me because that's what happens to my brain when I look at something that's a surprise. Dopamine is this brain chemical that wakes us up, and serotonin settles us down. And we want to have both in the balance that keeps us functioning well in life. Well, there are times when we want to be more charged up and excited, and it's when surprise and new things, when you simply stand up from sitting, that change does a little pop of dopamine. So that's why I love quilting, because I love my dopamine fix. I'm here to tell you. And it's rare that I get serotonin from sewing, but I do get my dopamine, and that's fun. So anyway, here we are. Now, I'm also thinking that as I make a lot of these, what's going to happen, this was made from the same square. So what's going to happen, though, is in the next square I make is I'll have two of these and two of these. And I might put those together and get a complete round of the same color. So there's a lot of things that can happen with this. So what I didn't finish this because it's not my goal to have you be thinking, oh, that's the finished product that I can make. I want you to I hope that it's not my job to figure this out for you, it's yours. But I hope that what you find in sewing and quilting is this sense of being alive, this sense of being happy and enjoying. Now, if I finished that and it was like, oh my God, that's butt ugly, then that's kind of a little kick too, because it's a surprise, and then it gets me fired up to go, okay, what else, this didn't work, but how about, and I can go find something else that works with it. So This is a very fun pattern to learn with. It's a very fun pattern to play with, and I'm excited. I'm excited to see it continue. And whenever we do our next production, it will be done, and I'll have it to show you whatever it was I figured out. I have a couple more things to show and tell. One is not all my stuff is this bright color stuff. A lot of it is. I'll say a lot of it is. But apparently I was in need of a little serotonin fix. And these lovely, calm butterfly fabrics popped out at me. And where are they? Here they are. What the? These popped out at me. And I went, oh my gosh, I love them. This isn't butterflies, but I saw those. Then I got those and I took them home. And one of the things I love to do, I love touching fabric. I love just mix and matching and trading out and, oh, but what about this one? Oh, but what about that one? So what I notice in these three is that this one has this very soothing gray creamy thing going on, but there's this deeper brown that kind of pops out. And if this has a color bubble on it, I don't know if it does. Oh, it does. Oh, look, they did them in butterflies. Isn't that cute? Look at all the different browns that are in there. That I can't even really see that creamy color, but it's in there. I guess it's the background in that one, maybe. I don't know. But most of the colors are this gray tone. And then these little poppers are what really make it work. So remember, those are your friend, because if you are trying to design and you're just at a dead end, but you love this one fabric, those color bubbles can help you think about what else you'd like to go with it. This one tends to be a tad green. It has just a little olivey color in it. I don't know, does it have? Yep, it does. And right there, just a little blue. There's a tealy, dusty teal blue, light and dark. And then, it's funny, as you look at the bubbles, it's not really a green. It's this brownish. Anyway, and what my eye sees is brown. I don't know, your eye might not. It might be different for you. So those again are a help, a little, not a cheater. They're a tool. They're a tool to help us think about other possibilities. This one, to my eye, has green. We'll see what it says. Yep, there's a real olivey green here, and a real light, almost a minty sagey green. But you have those colors to look at too. So so that's where I started. Then I went back to my stash and I just started pulling out stuff and going, okay, there's that. Here's this. And I had so much fabric out. I had probably 50 fabrics. And I thought, okay, I've got to make some sense of this. So then I started thinking, okay, dark, medium, light. So I kind of started organizing that. So here we go. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, that's all fine and good, but what are you going to make? This is sometimes where I start. Sometimes I start a very different way and I have a pattern, very specific pattern I'm going to try and use. And I try to look at that. If the colors in the pattern are distracting me, but I know I like the pattern and I can't get off of that colorway, so I'm trying to reproduce that very same thing in my studio. I'll take a black and white picture of it and then go back to my fabrics and decide what colors I want, and then go in the shades that fit that colorway. So these kind of go to some greens. I just have a little bit of each of those. Looks like I got a not fat quarter, but some little sample pack. And that one's in there. This one's a light. Here's a dark. And then after I got, and I love this, I love that this has that brown and this nice light blue, which remember came up in this one. And so that's kind of a fun one. This, I'm just going to say something that would go into my decision making. First of all, I would not leave it with this weird distracting thing on top. So that color is really good, but this is where our patterns start to enter in. This one is geometric, but it has a Gothic geometry, a Roman-esque geometry. This one is modern and maybe even a little juvenile. And to me, this throws it off. So I thought it would be perfect. I went, oh no, I know that really wonderful green. And this came here. And so I let that one go. Then this one is a favorite. I had yards and yards and yards of this, and I know this. Oh my gosh. So this is a weird one because it has a bright light and a deep dark. So it in itself has this contrast. So I'll just put that in another pile. This one, these two I pulled out thinking there's a greenish something coming up, but nah, that one might. So I might leave this one hanging over here. But after I go through my stuff, then I start thinking, okay, what have I got here? And I might have some patterns I've used before. I might need to just go to my Pinterest boards and start looking. But because I'm getting this range, I'm thinking quilts that have 3 basic colors or tones, or scrappy. And then always consider a brighter light. And this is something to think about with lights. Lights aren't just creams or whites. They have gray tones, they have green tones, they have cream yellowish tones. This actually has a green in it. It's a funny little murky green. I don't know what to even call it, but you might just see a little teeny bit of that. These two are both the same. I forget the company that makes these. Quilters Shades Plus. I don't know. Anyway, they're a marbly kind of thing. But this one clearly has almost an orange tone to it. Nope. This one is much better. So that works. This one to me is really wonderful. It pulls this whiter color out, and the gray really works. This cream is also kind of nice. So now I'm stuck with which way do I go? But I think that, no, I don't know. You take one away, see if when it's gone, does it still work? And if it doesn't, no, then maybe you need both. So maybe both of those need to be in there. This one is not going in there. So that's my process. And I don't know what I'm going to be making from this. Sometimes I fall back to just strips, and I just cut a bunch of 2.5-inch strips like you would be getting a pack of them in the fabric stores, and then look for jelly roll quilt. Sometimes I think about half square triangles and that carpenter's wheel, carpenter's star. And this selection would just be amazing in that. It probably would need either, because I'm heavy on the darks and not so heavy on the lights, that carpenter star might need a reverse of background. So the background, instead of being light and the star being dark, maybe I go with the super darks for the background. Because these mediums are not super, they don't, well, there's kind of, these are darker mediums, these are lighter mediums, but so there's some fun stuff, but I do have quite a mix. I mean, this is a real organic kind of fossil impressions or something, kind of sea life stuff, and it's more of an abstract, but it it works, I think. Now you may look at these and go, okay, those aren't what I put in there. But now I love this fabric and I love it with that. But then it takes us over to another side. So it's like a conversation, you know. You're talking about quilts, and then before you know it, you're talking about quilt shop, and then you're talking about that town, and then you're talking about travel, and you know, this is what happens. So it's a conversation with fabric. So I really encourage you to explore those conversations for your pleasure, for your joy, so that you get to really feel the depth of what those fabrics can do for you. And how are we on time? Okay, great. Let me show and tell a little bit here. This little baby out. What I just did there and cleaning up never happens in my studio. Just sharing that. So here's another one. My daughter approached me about making a baby quilt for someone, doing it with her. And she said, I was like, well, how old is the kid? And he's, I don't know, Todd 4, preschoolish. And what is he like? And well, their family, I guess, is rural and they have chickens and he loves their chickens. And so we're looking through my fabric and we get these two. Oh, those are perfect, she says. So, whew, okay, now what? So, so again, I did the same kind of thing. I went through my fabric. I pulled out, because sometimes what happens is while all these fabrics pile up and they kind of make me just thrilled to death about my fabric, they can, obviously, I think a lot of us feel this way, that can be also a real overwhelming thing to do. And so, so there's a mix of strategies that one can use, and but I do enjoy it. I do just really get quite a bit of zippity doo dah when I am playing. Grays. I'm glad I remembered to bring this up because grays are funny. Grays can go to a dusty brown. The brown can shift to a greenish hue. They can go to blues. They can be a real pure black, white, gray, light shade or dark shade. And what you'll notice even in these two fabrics, I don't think they're the same line or anything. I didn't even notice that. Hudson, Ohio. I don't think so. But even if they were, they're not the same designer that did them. Oh no, that's good old Joann's. So this one has a much richer, broader shades of color in its printing. This one has that undertone of the blue gray and then throws the golds and browns to reds on it. And it makes it a little tricky because this gray is a dustier, brownier gray. This is a bluer. So I thought I'd be using a lot of grays and really being quite simple. And then I pulled my grays out and went, well, heck, all of them hit a different mark with this. So I'm not sure even on those. This is kind of fun because it has this blue instead of a gray. It actually has a light blue in there. And so then I started with the browns to reds and played with those a little bit. Then this one came out and it hit the greens. And I went, oh, there is a lot of green in that one. So then I found this black green. So there's, you just kind of follow your heart on all of it and see what comes up. And I do love scrappy quilts. And one of the things I really like doing is making half square triangles and just doing random combinations of lights and mediums, darks and mediums, lights and darks and whatever. And then playing with that to create the design. But we'll see where this takes us. I'm obviously not even close to the final set of where we're headed. Now, I'm also really excited to have my daughter step in on this because she's the kind of person who would look at this and go, oh my God, Mom, this is way too much. And she just goes, okay, we're using these. We're going to use this and this and this. Done. Go. So whichever way you do it, whichever way feels good to you, just have fun, really enjoy. And obviously this stack here is a lighter grays, even white with a little gray. So a bunch of possibilities. If any of you watching or here, Misty, if you're have an idea, if something comes to your mind about how to use these two fabrics, they have to be pretty big piecing to get the chickens to show for a child's enjoyment.
Like this one because it looks like feathers.
I do too. I do too. Yeah, that's a fun one. And here's the thing. I know that having a stash and having our earth be not so consumer driven and all that kind of stuff is important. And I honor that. I certainly have bought a lot less fabric in recent years as I'm aging, but my fabric is my muse, and it serves that purpose. It may not, in fact, in all probability, most of the fabric I have will not become a quilt that I make. Hopefully, someone else will enjoy it. But if that's what makes you happy, then that's part of the process of making even all these kind of earthy colors might lead me to that because of what my brain learns in looking and my brain learns in touching and enjoying those fabrics. So I'm all about having fun with fabric. So I am a quilter. I'm also just someone who loves fabric. So a couple quilts to share. And Missy, help me if I brought these last month. Did I bring that one? Okay. This was one I made as I was doing here today, I pulled a bunch of greens out and made strip sets and cut them into squares and used them in a number of quilts. I probably have made 6 now. And then these were the final leftovers. And so I needed to fill in for it to be big enough for a child's quilt. So I added this green and put these purple borders on them in every other block. But you can also see that because these are leftovers, some of them were a little shy. So they got a little piece section, and that's just fine. just fine. So that was a fun one. And I wanted to share, I think I did that. Did I? Maybe not. Nope, I didn't. I have a technique I think I've demonstrated and shared here, but a lot of times children's quilts end up being about 50 inches or 48 inches, which is just wider than the width of fabric. And then when you end up putting your pieces for a back together, it's just ever so shy. And I don't want to put a skinny strip on an edge of a back because the seam will rub a lot. So what I do is I fold it. If this were one of those, it's not. That is actually, it works. If this were one of those, and our quilts for kids, we always label, what am I doing? Why isn't that working? For the quilts for kids, which is fun. But I come diagonally corner to corner, lay it out, cut along that fold, and then insert a strip. And that, because it's a diagonal, it expands in both height and length. Or if you move it a certain way, it only expands in one direction or the other. But it really makes the back kind of special and fun. So it's kind of fun to do. So that, I thought this one was that way. Sorry. I love those little leaves. This one is called a potato chip quilt. It's been quite the rage lately. And it's basically a bit of a courthouse step type of a block. So here's the block. So you just have, the whole thing is made from a strip that is half the width of the length. So all these pieces are the same size. This happens to be 4.5 by 2.5 cut. So 4.5 ends up being 4, 2.5 ends up being 2. So these two together lengthwise makes a 4 by 4 block. You sew the 2.5 by 4.5 to this end. Then you sew 2 end to end, 2 end to end, and sew them on. And you can keep going. You can keep doing another round and another round, 2 and 3 and 4 and so on. But I'm not really sure why it's called potato chip. Is that how you stack potato chips? Maybe is it you can't just have one? I don't know. But this was made from leftovers and just lots of fun. But again, thinking color and design, I go to my fabric and it runs me. It just says these go together, ready, set, go. And this could be a design that works with the butterflies. I wouldn't use this with the chickens because you need a bigger piece that shows the design of the chicken because it's such a big print. But on Pinterest, if you go to quilts, if you search quilts, big centers, you will get block designs that have larger sections of fabric. And I'm trying to see if this one, nope, doesn't have it either. So fun little guy quilts. This one is just strips. Again, this would be the same kind of process I demonstrated. I just have a lot of fabric I like that kind of sort of goes together. This is even looser in that what goes together because it's a kid's quilt. It just needs to be juvenile, bright, fun. And it's really easy to make. And if you check with Missoula Quilts for Kids, we have a pattern that you can actually use. And I have it on my phone, I do. But what I ended up doing, I just have to always do it my way, is this is 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 strips. I think this is 1, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Also, mine ends up being square, but, and this is a section cut off of this. But what I did on a couple of them that I've made is I just started cutting 14, 16 strips together, sewing those together, and then cutting out this center section, the bigger section, and then that gives me the boundaries for how long this one has to be and how wide that one has to be, and then that's a square of the two. So you can make them any size you want. And then what you have left over, you can make a strip set of this, a strip set of this, a strip set of this, and totally another strip set of this, and have a bunch of leftover pieces. And then cut the leftover pieces, stack them, and do a Chinese coin. And the Chinese coin quilt is, the coins are narrow cut of lots of strips stacked, and then a sashing that goes the whole length. So you just have stacks of coins, basically. Color-wise, this is a older quilt that I know I've shown here. Oh, and here's the back I was talking about. So here's the diagonal that helps make the back a little bigger, because this is just a hair bigger than the width of fabric. But here's just a strong contrast, two fabrics. So when you've got, this is that geese in the pond. So when you've got a urgent need to get done in a hurry, it's really a easy and great quilt to make. And you can make it a variety of sizes. The only thing, if you like doing that, you might understand what I'm going to say, is that the size of your half square triangle needs to be divisible by 3 so that you can get an easy 9 patch out of it. And it could be divisible by 3 in like 0.75 or 0.25 will help you get a good amount. But, and this binding is scrappy. It's leftover pieces of binding that I had. Yeah, it is fun. So it's just small pieces diagonally sewn together, and put those out there. This one is a different version of Chinese coins. It's in rail fence formation. So you have stacked coins, strip and strip, and then those 3 strips are a rail fence. So you have it perpendicular to the ones next to it. So everything just changes. When you use the solid strips on the outside, you have like these floating color strips in the quilt. If you were to do the strips on the outside, this kind of thing on the outside and a solid fabric in the middle, it would just be a really colorful quilt with just a little bit of a solid running through it. So it would have a real different look. And then the last one I'll share before we close is this one. I've shared this a long time back. It's a quilt that was a fun experiment. I absolutely loved this fabric and had it in my stash for a really long time. And just one day was like, okay, I'm using it. I'm going to use it. And I could have done something that was a little more distinct. This is an example of low contrast. I like it. It's very soothing to me. But it's a lot of little tiny 9 patches. And this is an easy quilt to make. It's super simple because you have your 9 patches here, and you can either make these in strip sets and cut them up, or you can have squares and sew the squares together. But then these go into a 9 patch, bigger 9 patch with this background fabric, and then it's just alternating them with the big squares of the large print. So using a border that is the only real light fabric in it, it kind of helped. I thought it helped just give it a little pop, but I certainly could have done something darker right to the edge of it, and it would have all been really, really hidden. So, and then I had this wonderful binding fabric that has this just little dash of blue, and there's just enough little bits of blue in the quilt that made that work, I thought. So sometimes you just got to have your little zing of color. So find it, do it. But this is the kind of quilt, these I've shown you, they're the kinds of quilts that come out of my big stacks of fabric. What am I going to do with this now? So thank you. And I believe this will be our last session until fall. So have a good summer. Sew lots if you want to. Certainly love your fabric, and off we go. Yay. And I'll be negotiating with you.
I'm so excited.
Mm.
Oh, I will be